I'm about to go teach a class, and that class is built around a cabinet that I haven't built yet. And I've got one day to do it. So let's get busy. I'm gonna keep it brief because there's work to do. Here's the situation. This class was built around a cabinet that I made 2-3 years ago, and I haven't built it since, and I gotta go teach people how to build it. So I have to know how to build the damn thing. So I'm gonna build it as fast as I can so that it's ready to do, let me rephrase that, so that I am ready to teach the thing when the time comes in 7 days. So let's get busy.
All right, let's do the thing. Let's talk about everybody's favorite first subject. Say it with me, friends. Grain selection. There are times when grain selection really matters. When you're doing a one-off piece, when you're building something for a client, when there are competing and contrasting lines. But there are also times when you're just building a thing out of wood and you don't need to overthink it, overcomplicate it. You can just pick up whatever board you have lying around basically and start chopping them up. And that's kind of what I did here. I know that's abnormal for me. I'm usually incredibly particular about grain selection. In fairness, the material I used was still pretty straight. I don't have any huge cathedrals in anything. But the class that I'm teaching is really largely about technique, about how to do the thing, not necessarily why we do the thing. We do touch on design in those classes, but that's not the focus of the class. So when you're going to do those classes, when you're just trying to get a thing done, don't fret too much about it. Just start building a thing. That's perfectly okay too. And then I'm just going to do all the milling things that you see in every woodworking video. I'm cutting things to size. I'm cutting things accurately to my plan, which is something of an abnormality for me because I kind of, fly by the seat of my pants. But if I'm going to make a cabinet as an example for 12 students, I should probably make it to the plans that I have that they're going to follow. Now, this is the moment where you'll see me consider grain direction a bit. I'm going to place things kind of where they're at, where they're roughly going to belong, just so I can see if a line is headed up or down or how it's going to compete with one another. So there's a little bit of me doing kind of my normal thing, making sure everything looks copacetic, but there isn't a huge amount of it.
You'd think I would learn my lesson. But where's the fun in learning, I suppose? No. Far better to just be a blunt instrument that makes the same stupid mistakes over and over again.
Man, you are one pathetic loser.
So, it is, I don't know what time it is, hold. Hour and a half into this build. And we have material milled up. I've got the back panel rough sawn for the book match and just settling over there. It's going to be far too little time to let it fully settle, but it is what it is. We'll make it work. These components are ready to get joined up. And before I break it out, yes, I am going to do this with the Shaper Origin. The class that I am teaching is built around the Shaper Origin. You do not need to use that machine in order to execute these techniques. It will be a simple sliding dovetail and a simple dado. That's all it is. So before you go blow up the comment section, yeah, I'm going to integrate technology because that's what I am meant to do next week, and also speed. So here we are. This is going to get written up right now. I have the files, both the SketchUp files and the tapered sliding dovetail files available. I will put them up on Patreon by the time this comes out. If you are a patron, a paying patron, you can access those files for free. If you have a free membership over there, then you can purchase those files for pretty cheap if that's something you're interested in. And now, I don't know, let's just do the damn thing. We are 3.5, 4 hours in, something like that, and joinery's all done. We've got our sliding dovetails for the back uprights. We've got just a standard dado for the center. So glue up's going to be a pinch. Forewarning, I'm not going to glue it up in this video because I'm going to break this down so I can take it to the class down in Florida next week. So I need to be able to flat pack it. So just a heads up. But now the next move is to cut the rabbet on the back so that I can fit a back panel. And this is going to get an asymmetric curve on the top and bottom. So I'm going to do that once this is all broken down. Once those things happen, it's literally just surface prep and edge profiles. So this is moving and grooving. What are we gonna do? Let's do the rabbit next. Let's go ahead and do that. Woo. If there are two things I know to be true thus far in my experience as a human, it's that words are hard and emotions are stupid. Truly, I remind my therapist of these two inalienable truths every single time we meet. But emotions do exist, and we would all be better off if we learned how to navigate them well, which is why BetterHelp is the sponsor of this week's video. Now, I know there's been a fair amount of controversy around BetterHelp in the recent past, and I don't want to sit here and be some obtuse goober on the internet and pitch a service that's doing people harm. I considered this partnership for weeks and researched what changes have been made, and I will link a resource down below for those of you who are interested. But the conclusion I came to was ultimately simple. BetterHelp can be a great introduction to therapy for some people and a resource for everyone to come to a deeper level of self-awareness. And in a moment where things like empathy and grace feel absent from the broader culture, self-awareness, in my opinion, is a thing worth striving for. That said, BetterHelp will connect you with a therapist who can help you find answers to some of life's questions, like how to maintain some level of empathy in a world that seems to thrive on righteous indignation, for example. Simply fill out a questionnaire and you'll match with a therapist in as little as a couple of days. Plus, you can easily switch therapists at any time at no extra cost if it's not the right fit, no questions asked. So click the link in the description or go to betterhelp.com/ENCurtis to get 10% off your first month of therapy. And thanks to BetterHelp for sponsoring this week's video.
Now let's talk about some of the more traditional techniques that students in this upcoming class are going to learn, because even though we're going to be cutting the double tapered sliding dovetails and the dados using the origin, some of the techniques, like a rabbet, for example, are going to be done in a more traditional way. And there are innumerable ways to cut a rabbet. You can use the router table, you can use the table saw, you can whatever makes you any tool you have on hand. I guarantee you can make a rabbet with power tool or a hand tool. But one way that I've done it a bunch of times in the past, and it always works quite well, is to simply take a trim router, put a fence on it, and hog off that material one pass at a time. I've done that for years. I did it when I was in school. I did it during the pandemic. It won't fail you if you take your time and go through it neatly. Now we got to add some curves onto this cabinet. If I were batching out these cabinets, if I were making multiples, I would create a template out of MDF, 1/4 inch most likely, or whatever I had lying around the shop. I would cut that out. That would give me a traceable pattern. Then I would cut it out on the bandsaw, and I would double stick or clamp that template down and template route it. But I'm only making one cabinet, so I'm just going to mark my curve on the cabinet itself. You see me double sticking the two pieces together, the top and bottom. So even if the curve isn't exactly what I intended, at least they're even. And you'll see me do this a lot too when I'm checking for curves, is I'll roll it on the edge after I belt sand it to make sure the curve is smooth. And that's just a nice, easy way to ensure that there are no flat spots along that curve. Now again, production versus one-offs. If I'm in a production run and when we go and make 12 of these cabinets in this class, we're probably going to use a router bit in order to chamfer or profile these edges. But I like using hand tools. It's just a thing that brings me joy, and I find that I get more interesting and more dynamic edge profiles by using them rather than using a guide bushing and a profile. And while I'm gluing up this back panel, why don't we have a little conversation about it, because I'm sure there will be questions. This is, of course, solid wood. It will expand and contract with the seasons. It's not dimensionally stable like a plywood is. I could veneer a back piece. I could put it in a frame and panel, but instead, I'm just kind of letting it float out there loosey-goosey, so isn't it going to cause problems in the future? Well, I'm giving it plenty of room to expand and contract. The general rule of thumb is about a 1/4 inch per 12 inches, and you can see I've got about a 1/4 inch for a 7-inch backer piece. I'll only glue it in the middle, I'll let the top and the bottom expand and contract, and it should be just fine.
Now, a couple other very brief points. The back panel, yeah, I mean, listen, it does have a little knot in here. I'm not going to lose sleep over that because this is a teaching piece. If this was a commission, I might have chosen a different piece for the back panel, but I think that ghost maple, that spalted maple, and the cherry play nicely together. I also didn't pay much attention at all, I should say, to the grain direction of the components of the cabinet. They're fairly well balanced because the stick I chose was essentially 100% cathedral or flat sawn material. So there's no straight grain versus movement in the cathedral and from one side to the other. So it still feels pretty balanced. This piece is going to get pretty dark because this particular stick got dark, but I think, again, that will only continue to work well with the ghost maple on the back. And then lastly, for the hanging of this cabinet, it's just going to be a simple French cleat. Again, I'm not going to do that right now because of the breakdown, and there's no sense in me adding a French cleat to this when I have to flat pack it in just a couple of days. But when I go to do the French cleat, it is important to note that it's only going to be glued to the top of the cabinet and not to the back panel in any way to allow that back panel to continue to expand and contract over time. So it's essentially going to be a pressure fit side to side and then glued to the lip on the top of the cabinet. Now, all that being said, why don't we do this? Why don't, before I close out this video, why don't we take a little trip down to Florida and see what happened with this bad boy in the class itself, because it's always interesting to see how students interpret a piece, but I think more importantly that it's important to note that this is a week-long class in which we are building 3 projects: a box, this cabinet, and a side table, and that is why we are using the Shaper Origin in order to allow us to work at speed and get a deeper understanding of a breadth of joinery. So let's take a trip. That was an adventure. I just got back literally maybe an hour and a half ago, and it was a delightful time teaching that class down in Florida. It was like everybody worked their tails off, and we had a really good time. Everybody had positive attitudes anytime they made a mistake. It was a learning opportunity. It was a tremendous class, and that cabinet was a lot of fun. It was a really, really good learning exercise for all of those guys. Talking about dados, rabbits, sliding dovetails, all of the things. So I'm going to go ahead and say that was a success. And again, you do not need to use the Origin to make that cabinet if you are not, we'll call it, technologically inclined. But I do think it makes life easier for operations like that. And you can take that kind of cabinet and make it as advanced as you need to make it a challenge for you. I have made that variations. Nope. I have made variations on that many a time where I've done frames and panels in the backs, put a little door on that kind of front cubby there. So there's all kinds of things that you can do to make it different and interesting and challenging. And you saw Kate do pyrography on the outside there, which was a lovely touch, which I never would have thought of. And she's going to paint that inside back panel there or maybe do some leafing on it. So go take the thing, go play with it, go make it yours. And if you do something interesting, shoot me a line over on Instagram or drop a comment down below and let me know, because I would love to see it and hear about it. And until next time, friends, I'm going to go get some sleep. So go make a thing and try to enjoy it if you can. And I will see you in the next one. This is cheating because I don't have anything in here right now, but I'd hate to break tradition. Cheers.